Hi, tonight I'm going to talk to you about Peter William Sutcliffe, as known as the Yorkshire Ripper. It's got a bit of a special place in my heart again, as I said about the Albert Pierpoint one. My stepfather worked in Special Branch when the Ripper investigation was going on, and he was in touch with one of the lead investigators at the time. So he was born on the 2nd of June 1946. I'm just going to do a disclaimer here. I've got 17 pages of notes. This guy was nuts, completely nuts. I know I keep saying that about everyone I talk about, but this is particularly brutal, graphic. Just, I'll read to you and you can make up your own minds. Okay, so he's 73. The bastard is still with us. So, as I said, my stepfather, he was in Special Branch for West Yorkshire Police. The senior investigating officers that were on the case actually believed that the Ripper was from Sunderland or Tyneside, because he released, this hoaxer released tapes saying, "I'm Jack, I'm from the Sunderland area." You know, it was just crap. Anyway, the hoaxer has just recently died. They did find out who he was. There was one particular detective constable, his name was Andy Laptew, that my stepfather was telling me about. He was absolutely convinced that it was Peter Sutcliffe. They found a £20 note on the body of one of the victims, and during those days they used to print the £20 notes, so they were actually brand new when they went into pay packets. So Sutcliffe worked as a heavy goods vehicle driver, a lorry driver, and what was found on one of the prostitutes was a £20 note that they managed to trace back to Shipley, where the HGV trucks went from. So he was convinced. Everybody poo-pooed him. The detective, the chief superintendent at the time, just said, "It's not him. He's from Sunderland. He's not from Yorkshire." So he was interviewed on a number of occasions, but because he didn't have a Tyneside accent, George Oldfield, who was the detective chief superintendent at the time, said, "It's not him. This guy has got a Geordie accent." There was something on the hoax tapes. I was speaking to my stepdad today, and he said that there was something on the hoax tapes that hasn't been released to the public and wasn't necessarily distributed throughout Special Branch or the detectives that were investigating the Yorkshire Ripper. But there was something that this hoaxer said that only the Ripper would know. So it's still a mystery. I mean, nobody really knows how he knew this. So his span of crimes were from 1975 to 1980. He used to drink in a pub in Burnley, where I'm from. There's a pub, where Burnley Cemetery is, there's a pub directly across the road, which is now a funeral director's. But I worked as a gardener in the cemetery when I was 17, and apparently Sutcliffe used to drink there, you know, when he was doing his rounds or his routes or routes, however you put it. He initially attacked women in residential areas, but then he moved on to the red light district because he saw that sex workers were an easy target. Now, just a side note, the term red light district or red light area comes from the 19th century, from America, where there was a saloon that was called the Red Light Saloon, and people would stop off and have, it was a bit of a watering hole. They would stop off and have some female company. So that's where the term red light district comes from. Just a random fact that I thought you might like to know. So he murdered over the course of 5 years. His weapons of choice were a pinball hammer, a knife, and a screwdriver. This guy was nuts. He murdered in total 22 people. No, sorry, I'm going to say that again. He injured and murdered 22 people. 13 were murdered, 9 were injured. So, his modus operandi then became from residential areas to the girls of the night, the sex workers. The first victim, her name was Wilma McCann. He struck her twice with a hammer in the head, and then he stabbed her 52 times. That's just, it's like I said about the Tate murders and the LaBianca murders. It's overkill. So this guy had some sort of frenzy with, inside him that he had to get out. So this poor woman was stabbed 52 times. She was a mother of 4, and one of her daughters, after her murder, actually committed suicide because she was so depressed about about her mother being murdered that she committed suicide. So I think, when we talk about these true crimes, we forget the knock-on effect that it has on the family and the friends of these victims. So it's really easy to get caught up in the goriness and the gruesomeness and the infamy of serial killers and what did he do and how interesting it was. But, just think how you would feel if it was you or your family or your friend. It's just... I think we're all guilty of not putting ourselves in that position. So I'm going to do it chronologically, right up until he was murdered. So we're going to start in 1976. Emily Jackson, she was stabbed 52 times. Marcella Clayton, he hit her with a hammer, but she survived. She later went on to testify in his trial. 1977, Patricia Tina Atkinson, murdered. This one was the only crime that Sutcliffe actually felt some remorse for. It was 16-year-old Jane McDonald. She wasn't a sex worker. They thought his MO was sex workers, but then when he murdered 16-year-old Jane McDonald, everybody became frightened because every woman was a target. It wasn't just sex workers, which is what everybody thought. Maureen Long, another victim. He didn't murder her, but he left her for dead. Joan Jordan, a sex worker from Manchester. She was murdered. This is the murder scene that they found the £20 note on Jean's body, that linked him back to the HGV pay packets in Shipley. Marilyn Moore, she was another sex worker. She was attacked, but she survived. She was able to give the police quite an accurate description of how Sutcliffe looked. So they had a composite of what they thought he looked like. And when they actually caught him, it was very accurate. It was very black eyes, curly dark hair, a beard, a goatee, beard, whatever. So, also with Marilyn Moore, there was tyre tracks found at the crime scene. And when the police looked back, they were actually the same tyre tracks that were found at another crime scene. 1978, Yvonne Pearson, a sex worker from Bradford. He repeatedly bludgeoned her with a pinball hammer. He jumped on her chest, then he stuffed horsehair in her mouth that was from a disregarded sofa and hid her body. Her body wasn't found for 2 months because it was behind this sofa. Please excuse me, I've got so many notes, literally 17 pages of notes here, because I couldn't, unless I've been reading this for a week, I couldn't remember all this information. 10 days later, he killed again. Helen Ritka, 18-year-old sex worker. He stripped her body completely naked, apart from her bra, which he pulled up, and she was wearing a polo neck, and he pulled that up, so she was found, you know, sort of in that position. She was actually murdered in the, here comes Boo Boo, hello baby. She was actually murdered in the car park of Manchester Royal Infirmary. So it's like he was just brazen. He would murder people wherever and whenever he felt like it. 1979. Josephine Whittaker, 19 years old. She wasn't a sex worker. She was just walking home from her house, to her house in Halifax, in Yorkshire. He killed Barbara Leach. She was 20 years old and she was a student at the University of Bradford. I think Boo Boo wants in on this video. Boo Boo, what are you doing? I think he wants in. Do you want to join in? We're talking about a horrible man. Okay. 1980. Sutcliffe was arrested for drunk driving. Whilst awaiting his trial, he killed 2 more people. He killed Marguerite Walls. Sorry. I think we're going to have a double. She was 47 years old. Jacqueline Hall, she was 20 years old. She was a student at Leeds University. I think you're joining in, aren't you? Okay, I'm just going to continue with the dog. Okay, Boo Boo. He attacked 3 other women during this time, but luckily all 3 of them survived. On the 25th of November, 1980, a co-worker of Sutcliffe's actually saw the composite of him and suspected that he could be the Yorkshire Ripper. The way his pattern, Boo Boo, come and sit down. The way his pattern was, the way he drove his lorry. Sorry. So sorry. Do you want to tell the story? No. Okay. He phoned the police and said, I think it could be Sutcliffe. Have a look at him. And the police, they didn't really jump on it. I'm really going to have to... All right, we're having cuddles. So in 1981, Sutcliffe was stopped by the police again. He had a 24-year-old Boo Boo. He's wagging his tail, just jumping on me. He had a 24-year-old sex worker in the car with him, Olivia Reevers. He was found to have false number plates on his car. He was arrested and taken to Dewsbury Police Station. He was questioned as he matched the description of the Ripper. Police returned to the site a couple of days later. They found a knife, a hammer, and a rope. Thank you. How many? January 1981. Covered in dog slobber now. Sutcliffe finally confessed to being the Yorkshire Ripper. He displayed no emotion. What are you doing? Apart from when they mentioned Jane MacDonald, she was the 16-year-old. He actually did show some... This is ridiculous. Boo Boo, please. Come on. He actually did show some remorse because she was so young. She was 16 years old, for God's sake. At his trial, he pleaded, can we guess? Not guilty. Boo Boo's finally laid down. If he doesn't knock my guitar over. He pled not guilty. Come on, Peter, we all know you did it. Your composite, your £20 note, your co-worker, the victims that survived all recognised you. Like, come on. He did plead guilty to manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility. He claimed that God told him to do it. He told the police that God told him to rid the world of dirtiness, as in sex workers were dirty. Whatever you say, Peter, whatever you say. So he was evaluated by 4 psychiatrists and they all diagnosed him with paranoid schizophrenia. He was sentenced to a minimum term of 30 years, meaning he was eligible for parole in 2011. So that was quite scary. So, but in July 2010, the High Court issued Sutcliffe with a whole life tariff. So this guy is never getting out. He currently resides in Broadmoor Hospital. It is the top security hospital, criminal psychiatric hospital in the UK. One of its other infamous residents is Ian Brady from the Moors murders. I will be covering the Moors murders, but it's very distressing because it involves very young children. I know I spoke about it with Richard Ramirez yesterday and a 9-year-old, but it's all children with the Moors murders, so it is very distressing. I'll cover them another day. He's been attacked twice whilst he's been in custody. I don't know why I'm laughing, but he deserves it. Calm as a bitch. One prisoner tried to strangle him unsuccessfully, and I forgot to tell you this, but he actually stabbed one of his victims in the eye with a screwdriver. And whilst he was in custody, one of the children are making noises. One of the other inmates actually stabbed him in the right eye with a pen, and he lost his vision in that eye. So, oh dear Peter, karma is certainly a bitch. I wish you could see this video. I wish you could see what you've done to people and how you terrified the entirety of Yorkshire, Manchester, Lancashire during your spree of hell. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it informative. Give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe. It would really mean a lot to me. And I will be back later in the week with Ian Brady and Myra Hindley. Not literally, but to talk about them. Okay, stay safe, guys. Bye.